Maganda na pag-usapan natin ngayong umaga kung paano ba natin mas maintindihan pa itong tinatawag na urbanization. Kaya makakasama natin ang isang pinagkakatiwalaan siyempre na Principal Architect, Urban Planner at siyempre siya rin ang Principal Architect, Urban Planner at Founder and Managing Partner na Palafox Associates at President ng Philippine Institute of Environmental Planners or PIEP. Walang iba kundi si Architect Felino Palafox Jr. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning, Jules. Good morning, Carla.
Alright, sir. To start off our discussion, ano po ba yung kailangan na maintindihan ng mga kababayan natin with regard to urbanization? Yung mga kailangan na solutions from 2014 onwards?
Yes, there are many best practices in the world where we can appropriate apply here. And meron din lessons made from many mistakes made. And one of them, siguro, yung mga planning, zoning, building, deed restrictions na ginagamit sa bayan natin are obsolete na. And we have to review them in the light of yung mga super typhoon and making our cities more walkable, bikeable, safer, better lighted, mixed-use development, like integrating together place to live, work, shop, and dine, learn, and worship without using the automobile. So we have to, even the American dream now has changed. I was just in the US, the Urban Land Institute, of which I'm a very active member, did a survey. The American dream now, which is different from 1946 until last year, is now Americans would like to live in more compact, livable places that are walkable, bikeable, close to public transit, close to place to work, shop, and dine, learn, and worship. So it has changed from 1946, and we Filipinos have always been copying the American dream. Because if we do the American style, we need 6 planets.
Yes. So, sir, can we talk about, sir, like, what are the certain establishments here in Metro Manila that really need improvement?
Yeah, I would say most of it, because we should have more sustainable, more resilient cities and communities. And at the moment, our cities have been developed, the way they are developed is not sustainable. Like, even places like Makati and Ortigas Center, these are the central business districts. And I'm told the daytime population is 11 times the nighttime population. You have the problem of bringing in the 11 times population in the morning and bringing them out of the evening. Because the employees of Makati have been priced out of the housing stock of Makati or Ortigas. The average employee in Metro Manila spends 1,000 hours a year in traffic because we have not planned our cities properly. Elsewhere in the world, the employees in better planned cities in the world spend only 300 hours a year in traffic. And imagine yourselves, if you have 40 years of economic life, you're wasting 700 hours a year in traffic, which you could have used that 700 hours a year in improving yourself, doing better things, ending a better quality of life with your family, and so on. So these are the results of poor planning. And then EDSA corridor is how not to develop a city. We have 13 MRT stations around EDSA corridor, surrounded by low-density gated communities and gated military camps. Elsewhere in the world, London, Paris, New York, Singapore, Tokyo, Hong Kong, stations are surrounded by high-density residential areas and mixed-use development so that there are more people within walkable distance. Another how not to do it, the 70-kilometer fault line from Bulacan through Metro Manila towards Laguna, Cavite. Some buildings and houses were allowed to be built on top of them. And PhilBooks tell us you should never build on top of a fault line, but you can build 5 meters away from it. So there's a lot to learn, and this in previous planning initiatives, this have been addressed, like the City Beautiful plan of Daniel Burnham in 1905 for Manila. Daniel Burnham planned Manila in 1905 and Chicago and Baguio in 1909. He compared, his inspiration was Paris and Venice. Paris, River Seine, Pasig River, wide boulevards, you live upstairs, you shop downstairs, more mass transit. And Venice, the Esteros of Manila, the canals of Venice, and Manila Bay, like the Bay of Naples in Italy. We're following that where the Americans were here. But after the Americans left, we copied erroneously car-oriented Hollywood and Los Angeles. That's why we're all suffering now because of bad planning, poor planning.
You know, that's true. Kasi na-experience ko na mag-office sa as well as sa Ortigas area. And honestly, the drive to work and the drive home, mas nakakapagod pa siya kaysa sa
Sobrang
office
tagal,
mismo.
talaga. Anyway, mahalaga yung, sorry, nabanggit ni Sir Palafox na with regard to the faults, di ba? Siyempre, yung common understanding natin pag pinag-uusapan natin yung mga architectures, yung mga buildings, kung gaano ba tayo ka-safe pag nasa buildings tayo.
Yes.
And Sir, very important na nabanggit niyo po yun kasi, siyempre, paano po ba natin mapaghahandaan if ever, sana wag naman mangyari, di ba? Para lang po handa tayo na maganap po yung kasing lakas na lindol na naganap sa Visayas dito sa urban region, dito sa Metro Manila. Meron po ba tayong magagawa para masolusyonan pa yung kinaharap na sitwasyon ng ating mga buildings dito?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. Right after Ondoy, I gave the government 60 recommendations to address the hazards before they become disasters. And through urban planning, architecture, engineering, and other sciences. And when President Pinoy was elected, when he said, "Kayo ang boss ko," I think I've sent him already 100 recommendations. There are 18 kinds of hazards before they become disasters. 10 man-made hazards and 8 natural hazards. In the Philippines, we are the third worst, most vulnerable country in the world when it comes to disasters because we are in the Pacific Ring of Fire. This crisis, Yolanda, the earthquake, the man-made crisis in Zamboanga, crisis creates an opportunity for us to build back better, safer, smarter, and more sustainable communities and cities. But the opportunity will not always be there. So now is the time to implement the best practices in the world and learn from lessons from mistakes made. And even this program, you invite me only when there's a disaster. I wish you invite architects, engineers, urban planners, and scientists before the disaster happens. And it's available. If you give me your email, I can give you these 100 recommendations. Lessons I've learned doing architecture and urban planning work in 38 countries, which the tradition of planning is better recognized in other countries in the world than in our country. And in 1975-77, the only 2 years I worked for government, I was team leader of the World Bank funded Metroplan Manila. And I think we had more than 300 recommendations. I think only very few were implemented, like partially the light rail transit. We could go back to them and this opportunity now to address them. Even our obsolete building code, like the Super Typhoon Yolanda, the wind speed was 315, 320 kilometers per hour. I think the building code for is 220 kilometers per hour. And I think some of the government buildings, like public schools, reportedly only 160 persons per hour. So this, the President's directive, and Secretary Coloma keeps mentioning it, and Secretary Ping Lacson, we should build back better. So I hope it will not just be a slogan. And on the ground, I accompanied Secretary Lacson on his first official trip to Tacloban, Guiang, Baybay, and Palo. And the bank houses, I think they did not follow also the instruction of Secretary Singson, that they should be at least 9 square meters. Some of them were being built 6 square meters, which I feel, I was part of the rehabilitation of the Indian Ocean tsunami, Sri Lanka and Indonesia. And the houses we designed there were 21 square meters. So at least brothers and sisters don't share a room, or fathers and daughters don't share a room. I think the one being done now, 9 square meters, is not decent housing. So we should have at least 3-bedroom houses, 21, 22 square meters, just like what was done in Sri Lanka and Indonesia after Aceh. So now is the time to build back better, safer, smarter communities and cities and buildings.
So of course, we're doing this through green architecture, and I know that you are now working with San Juan City. Can you tell us a bit more about this project?
Yeah, San Juan City was a very pleasant surprise. Mayor Guiang, the Vice Mayor, and the City Council, they appointed Palafox Associates to do the urban planning for San Juan. And to our pleasant surprise, the Palafox plan for San Juan was cited by Berlin, Germany, which I went to Berlin, Germany to give a lecture on smart cities of the future, because we use the principles of green urbanism, green architecture, smart cities of the future. And one feature of that is before we started the planning of San Juan, we asked for a hazard mapping.
Yes.
So areas like that will be vulnerable to flooding, we overlaid it over the zoning. So it will have a different building code, like houses and stills or buildings and columns, and 3 access levels for San Juan. Street level, sidewalk level, access to your house or your building, then elevated interconnected walkways so that even if it's flooded, you can still go to work, go to school, and so on.
Yes.
And a 3rd level monorail that will be interconnected with MRT EDSA and LRT Aurora. And that make it smart, safe, and sustainable, walkable, bikeable, integrating places to live, work, learn, shop, and dine, and worship in a livable community.
Alright. Sir, as a public administration student, yung isa sa aspect na pinag-uusapan namin pagdating sa urbanization is yung gusto daw ng mga community na maging effective, efficient, and economic for them yung maging result ng urbanization. So while we want this efficiency sa urbanization nga sa mga cities, how can we ensure na while we're doing urbanization na hindi naman siya makaka-trigger pa na lumala yung pollution?
Yeah, like sa green urbanism, no, the complete street in cities and communities we have designed, it's a guideline, the green urbanism and green architecture. The cross section of a urban road should be 1/3 for trees and landscaping, 1/3 for pedestrians and bicycles, and only 1/3 for the moving traffic lanes. You look at the EDSA corridor, how not to do it again. It's all concrete. There are no trees, and we've been doing this in master plan communities that we do, and that every car you own in the Philippines, you must plant 10 trees to recover the oxygen out of the carbon monoxide per car. In Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Saudi Arabia, I had proposed 17 trees per car. They have larger cars. And if we do that, that's addressing the environment again. And we have the triple bottom line approach to our development. People first, or social equity, and then planet Earth or the environment. Then we can talk about profit or economic goals. What's happening in our country, it's mostly just economic goals, profit, profit, profit. And then for addressing these disaster areas into safer, smarter, more sustainable cities, it should not just be business driven, but solutions driven. See, usually like these controversies and reclamation, I think they are more business driven. But if you do reclamation properly, like Dubai, the Netherlands, Singapore, Manhattan Island, they are not just business propositions, but they're also used to help prevent, reduce the waves from tsunamis and storm surges. And we have the solutions, but we need the ingredients for success in building cities and communities is, number 1, visionary leadership and political will. Number 2, good planning. Number 3, good governance. Once you have this, it's easier to get the funding. And everything must be done with transparency, accountability, and good governance. Like Aceh, Indonesia, the private sector donations was, I think, reached up to $7 billion.
Wow.
Their target was $4 billion because everything was in the website. Everybody could just access the website where his or her donation went, and buildings that went up, the bill of materials, the specifications, everybody knows about it. And we see in the newspapers today, there are some issues about this, and it could be addressed really with transparency, accountability, and good governance. And I'm glad the President has been addressing through his administration our 3 biggest challenges in our country, which is corruption towards good governance, criminality towards better peace and order, and then climate change to protect and enhance the environment. And through urban planners, architects, engineers, and scientists can help. Because I think in our country, I'm sorry to say this, we architects, planners, and the engineers and scientists, we're second-class citizens in this country. We only come out in the open when a disaster happens. But elsewhere in the world, like in Dubai or Singapore, they listen to the experts before they make a decision on the built environment. Unfortunately, the ones making decisions on the built environment in our country are not really architects, planners, or engineers. but other professions who are better recognized.
So I just have a quick question before we wrap up our conversation, sir. Because you mentioned earlier while we were talking in Dubai, in
Yes.
Abu Dhabi, they were able to do this in 50 through transparency, accountability, and good governance. Kung tayo gagawin natin, parang I guess there's a mindset na parang, how are we gonna start? Kasi parang it's all laid out already. Can we do that? Can we do it if we follow these three things?
We can start now, and in fact, the crisis created by these disaster areas are opportunities to do this right now. And like Dubai, I was very fortunate to have been name hired. I did not apply for the job to work for the rural Dubai, 77 till 81. And there were 5 specific instructions of Sheikh Rashid bin Maktoum, Al Maktoum, to us. We were 20 planners, architects, engineers from 14 countries. I was the youngest and the only Southeast Asian. Only 5 things. Bring Dubai into the first world from the fourth world in 15 years. We were able to do it in 10 years. Create a garden city out of the desert. They were importing soil from Pakistan, irrigation from Germany, flowers from Holland. Make Dubai number 1 city or emirate in the Middle East. They were able to achieve that in less than 10 years. And the other one was design Dubai as if there's no oil, because in 35 years they ran out of oil. And number 5, which I like very much, for every year of service, go around the world and copy, get inspiration from the best practices in the world. And that I learned a lot. I learned more in that work in Dubai that I may have learned in Harvard or UP or UST. It's really the real world, and it's so inspiring when you see it built from a desert. And we can do that in our country. In our country, we have so many positive things. Like we're number 1 in the world in marine biodiversity. We're now number 1 in sailors. And we're now number 1 in call centers, number 2 in BPOs. We have the 3rd longest coastline. Other countries reclaim or go to war because they don't have enough coastline. Number 4 in gold and shipbuilding. Number 5 in all other mineral resources. So we have so many things going for us which we can take advantage of.
Yes po.
Yeah.
Alright, so Carla, it only shows no, na it's really possible. At siguro magandang gamitin natin na perfect example yung nangyari sa Dubai, na it's really possible na mangyari din sa Pilipinas. So sir, thank you so much na nagbahagi na naman kayo ng added knowledge sa ating mga kababayan with regard to urbanization. Mga boss, muli nakasama natin ang Principal Architect, Urban Planner, and Founder and Managing Partner ng Palafox Associates. Walang iba kundi si Architect Felino Palafox Jr.
Maraming salamat po.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you.